Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor. Two of the brightest stars Hollywood ever created, and two women forever compared, contrasted, and often put against each other. Behind the dazzling premieres, the adoring fans, and the endless magazine covers, there was a rivalry the studios loved to fuel, and the public loved to believe. But was it all real? Or was there something deeper, an unspoken feud that shaped both their careers? Today, we reveal the truth about Monroe and Taylor, and why their paths crossed in ways few ever understood. In the late 1942 and early 1952, Hollywood was reinventing itself. Television was threatening cinema, and the studios needed stars bigger than life itself. Enter Marilyn Monroe, an orphaned girl turned blonde bombshell who embodied desire and vulnerability all at once. At the same time, Elizabeth Taylor, once a child star, was blossoming into one of the most commanding presences on screen. Both were unstoppable, but Hollywood only had room for one queen at the very top. And that's where the story begins. Studios thrived on drama, not just on screen but off it. Monroe was marketed as the ultimate sex symbol, carefree, playful, and tragically innocent. Taylor was branded as the serious actress, classy, commanding, with a striking beauty the press never let audiences forget. Magazines splashed their images side by side. Who was the greater beauty? Who was the bigger star? Who would last longer? It was a comparison neither asked for, but one both had to live with. By the mid-1952, Monroe was everywhere. Gentlemen prefer blondes, the 7-year itch, bus stop all cemented her as Hollywood's most bankable star. Yet, at the same time, Taylor's paychecks began to outpace hers. When Elizabeth signed on for Cleopatra at a record-breaking $1 million, Monroe reportedly felt the sting. She was underpaid, undervalued, and constantly fighting for respect from studio executives who only saw her as a pinup. Taylor, meanwhile, was commanding not just big salaries but creative control. The gap between them grew, and with it, the whispers of resentment. Hollywood gossip wasn't just about films, it was about men. And Monroe and Taylor's names circled around some of the same figures. Taylor's stormy romance with Eddie Fisher, her later marriage to Richard Burton, and Monroe's ties to powerful men in politics and entertainment all drew comparisons. Journalists painted them as rivals in love as well as work. Whether or not it was true hardly mattered. The image of two glamorous women vying for men and power was too tempting for Hollywood to resist. By the early 1962, the contrast between them became heartbreaking. Monroe was spiraling late to sets, battling addiction, her insecurities worsening under the weight of fame. Taylor, though scandal-ridden, was surviving and thriving. She had turned every crisis, from Fisher's betrayal to Burton's affairs, into headlines that only boosted her career. Monroe, on the other hand, was crumbling under hers. To the public, the feud looked like competition. In truth, it was the story of one woman who managed to master Hollywood's brutal system, and another who was destroyed by it. Nothing symbolized the rivalry more than Cleopatra. Monroe wanted the role. She had begged studios for more dramatic parts, desperate to be taken seriously. But it was Elizabeth Taylor who landed it, and for an unprecedented paycheck. When news broke, Monroe reportedly told friends she was furious. The part could have been her turning point, her escape from typecasting. Instead, it became Taylor's defining moment. That one role widened the gulf between them in a way that could never be repaired. In August 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead at just 36 years old. The news shocked the world. Elizabeth Taylor, at the height of her own fame, remained mostly silent. There were no public tears, no lengthy statements. Some say it was respect, others say it was guilt, or perhaps the uncomfortable truth that Hollywood had always demanded one woman win and the other lose. Whatever the case, Monroe's death cemented her as a tragic legend, while Taylor's career marched on for decades more. Looking back, the rivalry between Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor says more about Hollywood than about them. Two women, both talented, both ambitious, were forced into roles not entirely of their own choosing. Monroe became the eternal victim of her image, loved, desired, but never fully respected. Taylor became the survivor, mastering scandal, money, and power to stay on top. And yet, at the heart of it, both were victims of the same system, a system that thrived on pitting women against each other. So, was there a feud? Yes, but not in the way tabloids suggested. It wasn't just jealousy or bitterness. It was structural, engineered, and magnified by studios and the press. Monroe envied Taylor's control. Taylor pitied Monroe's struggles. In the end, they were less enemies than unwilling reflections of each other. Two women caught in Hollywood's cruel game, each paying a different price. The rivalry wasn't personal, it was the tragedy of fame itself. Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor will always be remembered as Hollywood's twin legends. One who burned bright and fast, the other who endured and reinvented herself time and again. Their so-called feud is less about hate and more about what happens when two women are forced into a cage match by a system that never wanted them both to win. And in that story, perhaps, lies the real truth of Hollywood's golden age.